When my wife's coworker showed up unannounced, I smiled, then I noticed he had my wedding ring on, the one I lost 2 years ago. I'm sitting here staring at my left hand like it is accusing me, because 2 years ago I lost my wedding ring, the real one, the one with a little dent on the inside from when I dropped it on our kitchen tile the first week we were married. And I have replayed that loss so many times in my head that it became one of those annoying mysteries you file away. Then today my wife's coworker showed up at my door unannounced. I smiled like a normal person, then I noticed he had my ring on his hand. And my brain just stopped. I know how dramatic that sounds, and I know people online will immediately jump to the obvious, but I need to lay this out the way it happened because the order matters, and because I feel like if I skip one boring detail my mind will try to rewrite it into something easier to swallow. I am married to Nessa, we have 2 kids, both still young enough that they think the world is mostly safe if the adults speak calmly. We have been together long enough that you get into that autopilot mode, schedules, lunches, school forms, laundry, repeating the same arguments about money and time. Nothing exciting, nothing glamorous, just life. 2 years ago I lost my wedding ring. It was not a romantic story. It was the dumbest mundane thing. I took it off because my finger was swollen after I messed up my hand moving some heavy boxes for a project at home. I remember setting it on a little shelf by the sink because I told myself I would put it back on after I rinsed my hands. Then the kids needed something. Then I got pulled into another thing, then another thing, and by the end of the day it was gone. I tore the house apart, I checked the drain trap, I moved the fridge, I pulled out the trash bag, I even emptied the vacuum canister like an unhinged person. Nothing. Nessa told me it would turn up, she told me it was just a ring, she told me not to beat myself up, and I remember being annoyed at how calm she was, not because I wanted her to be upset, but because I felt stupid and I wanted someone else to validate that it was a big deal. It did not turn up, weeks became months. I replaced it with a cheap band because I hated the feeling of a bare hand, not because I thought a ring is magic, but because it reminded me that I chose my family, I chose my life, and I did not want to be the guy who loses his ring and then slowly stops caring about the marriage too. Nessa never replaced hers, she kept wearing hers, which made me feel worse in a quiet way, like I was the weak link. Now skip to today, a weekday afternoon. I was home because I work remote, Nessa was at work, the kids were at school, the house was quiet in the way it only is for a couple of hours, and I was halfway through a boring meeting when someone knocked on the door, not a polite little tap, a confident knock like a delivery person or someone who is used to doors opening for them. I muted my mic, walked over, opened the door, and there he was, a man I have seen in passing exactly one time maybe, and even that might be my brain trying to claim I recognized him. He looked around my age, not young, not old, clean cut, the kind of face that looks friendly without doing much. His posture was relaxed like he had been there before, like he was showing up to a place he belonged. He said my name like he knew me, which should have been the first red flag because I never told him my name. He said he worked with Nessa, he said there was a work thing, he said she forgot something important and he volunteered to swing by because he was in the area. He said it casually like it was helpful, like it was normal. I smiled because that is what you do when you are confused but trying to be polite. I asked if everything was okay. He said yes, just paperwork, just a signature, just one quick thing, and he held up a plain folder like proof. Then my eyes dropped, not because I was hunting for something, but because my brain does that weird scan when a stranger is at your door, and that is when I saw the ring on his left hand. Not a similar ring, not a generic band, my ring. I know it was my ring because of the dent, and because of the way the metal catches light on the edge where it got scratched the day I dropped it, and because my ring had a tiny engraving inside that you can only see if you know where to look, and the band on his hand sat the same way on the same finger, it was too exact to be coincidence. For a second my mouth went dry and I had this stupid thought that I was hallucinating, like stress can make you see things. Then he shifted the folder and the ring flashed again, and it was like someone slammed reality into my face. He kept talking, he asked if Nessa was home, I said no, she was at work, and I watched his eyes flick toward the hallway behind me, not in a creepy way that I can point to as obvious, but in a quick assessing way like he was checking if anyone else was around, and my skin went tight. I told him I could pass along whatever it was. He laughed and said it really needed her signature. Then he said he could come back later, and he started to step back, still smiling, still casual, like this was just a missed timing thing. And here is the part I am embarrassed about. I did not confront him right there. I did not grab his hand. I did not point and shout, because my brain was trying to protect me from doing something irreversible while my kids could walk in at any minute. And also because my mind was still stuck on one impossible question: how did he get my ring? I told him sure, come back later, and I watched him walk away with that same relaxed pace. Then he turned at the end of my walkway and waved like a neighbor, then he left. I shut the door and just stood there for a second, and my hands started shaking so hard I had to put my palm against the wall to steady myself. Because once the door closed, the normal polite mask dropped, and it hit me that I just let a stranger walk away wearing something that belonged to me, something that symbolized my marriage, and he wore it like it was his. I went back to my desk, my meeting was still going, people were still talking about projects and timelines, and I stared at the screen like I could force my brain to return to normal. But my thoughts kept looping, the dent, the engraving, the way he said my name, the way he looked down the hallway, the fact he came when Nessa was not home. I ended the meeting early with a weak excuse, then I called Nessa. She did not answer. I texted asking if one of her coworkers had stopped by. I kept it vague because my fingers were shaking and I did not want to put something in writing that I could not take back. She called me back maybe 10 minutes later, her voice tight like she was annoyed I interrupted her day. She asked what is going on and I told her calmly that someone from her work came to our house and I asked who he was. She said a name, Carden, like it was nothing, like she was nomming a chair. She asked why, and I said he was here looking for her, and her pause was not long, but it was enough. It was the kind of pause where you can hear someone recalculating. She asked what did he want, and I told her he said paperwork, and she made a little sound like she was irritated. Then she said she told him not to bother us at home. She said he is pushy. She said she would handle it. I asked her if she knows he is wearing my wedding ring, and the silence on the phone turned heavy like the air in the line thickened. And she did not answer immediately. Then she laughed, not a happy laugh, a sharp laugh, and she said, "What are you talking about?" I told her I saw it. I told her it is my ring, and she said no. She said there is no way. She said you must have seen wrong. She said maybe it looks similar. And she started sounding defensive, not shocked, not confused, defensive. I asked her where my ring went, and she said she does not know. She said you lost it. She said you were the one who took it off, and she said it with that tone like she was reminding me of a verdict. I asked her if she gave it to him and she snapped and told me to stop. She told me I am accusing her of something insane. She told me she cannot talk right now. Then she said she would come home after work and we would discuss it, and she hung up. I stood in my kitchen staring at my cheap replacement band on my hand, and it felt like a joke, like I had been wearing a placeholder while my real ring was out there on another man's finger, and my wife was acting like I was the one being unreasonable for noticing. I did not know what to do, so I did the only thing my brain could handle. I went searching for proof I could hold. I went to the drawer where we keep our marriage stuff, the little envelope with our marriage certificate copy, the warranty for the ring set, the receipt from the jeweler because we bought them together, and I found the purchase paperwork, and on it there was a serial number not on the outside but listed under the item description, and there was a note about the engraving. I stared at that serial number until my eyes blurred because it meant my ring was not just recognizable to me, it was identifiable in a way that might matter if this got ugly. When the kids got home, I acted normal. I made sure they ate. I asked about school. I smiled at the right moments, but my head was buzzing, and I kept replaying that ring flash on Carden's hand like my mind was trying to burn it into permanent memory. Nessa got home later and she walked in like she had prepared herself. Her face was set. She kissed the kids. She asked about homework. She did not look at me, and when the kids were finally in their rooms, I asked her to sit down. I told her exactly what happened. I told her he came by. I told her he said my name. I told her he wore my ring, and I told her I am not crazy and I am not guessing, I am sure. And I told her I found the serial number in our paperwork. Nessa's jaw tightened and she said I am making a big deal out of nothing. She said I probably saw a similar ring. She said men wear wedding bands. She said you lost yours, and she kept circling back to the fact I lost it like that closed the case. I asked her why he would come to our house, and she said he is a coworker. He oversteps. He thinks he is helpful. She said he is annoying, and she said she told him not to show up, and she said it like she was trying to turn him into a harmless irritant. I asked her why he knew my name, and she said he probably saw it in a file. Then she corrected herself and said maybe she mentioned it casually at work, like that is a normal thing, like my name was just a fun detail for her office chatter. I asked her again if she gave him my ring, and she finally looked at me directly and said no. Then she added that I am acting paranoid, and she said it with this edge like she was punishing me for forcing the conversation. I asked her to call him right now and ask him to take the ring off and bring it back, and she refused. She said she is not humiliating herself at work because I have some obsession with a ring, and she said if I want to embarrass myself, I can do it. That was the moment something shifted in me, because it was not even about embarrassment. It was about her choosing his comfort over mine, her choosing the story that keeps everything smooth over the truth that might be messy. I told her then that I was going to handle it, and she rolled her eyes and she said fine, go handle it, and she went upstairs like the whole thing bored her. I did not sleep much. I sat there thinking about the serial number, thinking about how to get proof without doing something stupid, thinking about how my wife could be so casual when another man wore the ring she slid onto my hand years ago. The next morning I emailed the jeweler, not a dramatic essay, just a request. I asked whether the serial number could be used to confirm identity if the ring was recovered, and whether they keep photos or records. They replied a few hours later with a simple answer. Yes, they could verify, and yes, they had internal records tied to the sale. I stared at that email like it was a rope, because now I had a path that did not rely on my wife admitting anything. I told Nessa I was going to her workplace to speak with her coworker, and she told me not to. She told me that would be unhinged. She told me I was going to cause drama, and she told me she would not forgive me if I made a scene. That word scene made me want to laugh because the scene already happened. It just happened quietly with a man at my door wearing my ring and my wife trying to act like it was no big deal. So I went, not to storm and yelling, but to stand in the lobby and ask for him because I needed to see that ring again in a place that had cameras, witnesses, accountability, and I needed to watch how everyone behaved around him. Nessa works at a mid-sized equipment distributor, mostly warehouse and admin. The building is all glass and metal and the kind of place where the lobby smells like nothing, just air conditioning. I signed in, told the receptionist I was there for personal matter with an employee. She asked for the name, I said Carden, and she looked at me like she did not love this, but she called anyway. While I waited, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears, and I kept thinking about how ridiculous this is, how I should not be standing in a business lobby trying to retrieve my wedding ring from a stranger. Like, this is not my life, this is not what marriage is supposed to look like. Carden walked out a minute later and he smiled like we were buddies. He said my name again like he enjoyed using it, and he asked how he could help. And there it was, the ring, right there on his left hand, my dent, my scratch, my band. I did not point and yell, I did not do anything dramatic, I just asked him where he got that ring, and his smile did not fully drop, but it tightened like he had to adjust quickly. He said it was his, he said he had it for a while, he said what ring, and he wiggled his fingers like he was being playful, and I felt this surge of anger so sharp I almost stepped forward, but I kept my feet planted because I wanted him to keep talking. I told him the serial number, I told him it matches a ring I lost, and I told him I am asking once politely for it back, because if he does not return it, I am filing a police report for stolen property and I have documentation. Carden's eyes flicked around the lobby like he was checking who was listening, then he said he did not know what I was talking about. He said I must be confused, then he leaned in slightly and said something that made my skin crawl. He said maybe I should talk to my wife because she knows where it came from. Then he stepped back and smiled again, and he said he had work to do, and he walked away. I stood there for a second feeling like the floor was unstable because he just confirmed the worst possibility without actually saying it. He tossed it at me like a bone and walked away like he was untouchable. I walked out of that building and sat in my car and stared at my steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking enough to drive. When I got home, Nessa was waiting, not in a caring way, in an angry way. She demanded to know what I did. She demanded to know if I embarrassed her. And I told her I asked him about my ring. And I told her he said I should talk to you. And her face changed just slightly. Her eyes hardened like she was bracing. I asked her again where my ring went, and she exploded, not screaming but rapid. She said I lost it. She said I am blaming her to avoid taking responsibility. She said I always do this. She said I always twist things into some conspiracy, and the word conspiracy made me go cold because it was such a big word for such a simple question. I told her the ring is real, it exists, it is on his hand, so the question is not whether it exists, the question is how it got from my sink shelf to his finger. Nessa went quiet, then she said I am ruining her life, and she said she cannot believe I would show up at her job, and she said she is done talking about it. I told her fine, then I am filing the report, and she laughed again, that sharp laugh, and she said good luck. She said you have no proof he stole it. She said you lost it, and she said the cops are not going to care. I filed the report anyway, not because I expected a dramatic arrest that day, but because I needed a paper trail. I needed an official record that I claimed this ring as mine and that I saw it on someone else. The officer who took the report was polite but tired. He asked when I lost it. I told him 2 years ago. His eyebrow lifted. He asked why I am reporting now. I told him I just saw it. I told him the serial number is on the original paperwork, and I gave him a copy. He told me pawn shops and second-hand transactions sometimes have logs. He told me it might be hard after 2 years, but he said the serial number helps. He also asked the question I did not want to answer. He asked if there was some domestic situation tied to this, and I said I do not know, and he looked at me in that way that felt like he did know what this smelled like. I went home feeling hollow because the report was filed, but filing a report does not fix a marriage. It does not explain a wife's defensiveness. It does not explain a coworker at my door using my name and wearing my ring like a trophy. That night, after the kids were asleep, Nessa finally admitted one thing, not the whole truth, but one piece. She admitted she found the ring. She said she found it not long after I lost it. She said it was behind the sink pipe panel. She said it must have fallen in a way that slid down. She said she forgot to tell me. Forgot for 2 years. I asked why she did not tell me, and she said she did not want to fight about how careless I was. She said she put it somewhere safe. She said she planned to give it back when things were calmer. I asked where she put it and she stared at me, then she said she does not remember exactly, and I felt my throat tighten because she was still lying, she was still trying to keep the truth slippery. I asked if she gave it to Cardin and she said no again, but her voice was smaller, and then she said something that made my stomach drop. She said Cardin saw it in her desk one day and asked about it. She said he picked it up and joked about how heavy it looked. She said she told him it was mine. She said he put it back. I asked if she reported it missing after that and she said no because she did not think he would take it. She said she did not want drama at work. She said she did not want to look foolish. I stared at her and felt this slow rage building because she chose not looking foolish at work over telling me the truth. She chose not rocking the boat over returning my ring to my hand. I asked her why he came to our house and she said she did not know. She said maybe he is messing with us. She said maybe he is trying to make her look bad. And I asked why a coworker would risk showing up at a married woman's house unless he felt protected by something, unless he felt like he had leverage. Nessa did not answer that. She just sat there with her arms crossed like she was waiting for the conversation to end. And I realized that even if she was not cheating, she was hiding something big enough that she was willing to let me think I imagined my own ring on his hand. I slept in the living room that night not as a punishment, but because I could not lie next to her and pretend the air was normal. Update 2 weeks later. 2 weeks is long enough for the shock to turn into this steady low burn that makes everything in your house feel slightly off. Like the walls remember what was said even when you are trying to talk about normal stuff. The police report did not magically fix anything, but it did create pressure, and pressure does interesting things because once there is a case number, people start making choices they were avoiding. Few days after I filed, an officer called me back and told me they reached out to Cardin. He denied everything. He claimed the ring was his. He claimed he bought it secondhand. He claimed he had no idea who I was, which is funny because he said my name at my door, but the officer said denial is common. And he told me the next step was verifying the serial number and checking whether any local pawn records were tied to it. I asked the officer if they could request those records. He said yes, but it takes time. He also said if the ring was transferred privately, it might not show, and the way he said it was careful, like he was trying to keep my expectations realistic without saying what he was thinking, that this could be a dead end. While all that was happening, Nessa kept acting like the issue was my reaction, not her choices. She told me I was making our home tense. She told me the kids could feel it. She told me I needed to stop bringing it up. I told her the kids feel it because you are lying, and she said she is not lying. She said she told me everything, and she said it with the confidence of someone who has practiced the sentence. I asked her to show me her desk drawer at work because if the ring was there, there might be something else there too, something she did not want me to see, and she refused. She said her workplace is private. She said I am not allowed back there. She said it would be embarrassing, and she said embarrassing again like it was a valid reason for anything. The first real escalation happened at school pickup, not in some dramatic shouting way, but in a small moment that made my stomach drop. I went to pick up the kids and another parent I barely know made a casual comment about how friendly Nessa's coworker was, and I asked what coworker and she described Cardin. She said he had been there last week dropping off something for Nessa. She said he was so polite. She said he was joking with staff like he knew them. I felt my skin go tight because why was he at my kids' school not to pick them up, not to sign them out, just there, near them, near the building, in my space again? I asked the staff if anyone had released information to him. They looked confused. They told me no. He was just in the office for a minute because he said he had to deliver something. They said he had a visitor badge. They said he left. That night I asked Nessa why her coworker was near our kids' school and she swore she did not know. She swore she did not ask him, and I believed her about that because her face showed real fear for the first time, not the defensive anger, fear. Then she did something that made everything worse. She asked me if I had told the police he came to our house, and I said yes, and she went pale, and she asked what exactly I said, and she asked it like she was not asking for clarity, she was asking to measure damage. I asked her why she cared so much what I told police, and she said because she could lose her job if this becomes a scandal. And I stared at her because the words I expected were I am scared for our family, I am scared for our kids, I am sorry I hid the ring, and instead she jumped to her job, her reputation, the image she has at work. I told her I do not care about her work image right now, and she snapped back that I do not understand how things work there. She said Cardin is close with certain people. She said he makes problems disappear, and she said it like she was warning me, not confessing, and my blood ran cold because that is not how you describe a normal coworker. The next day, I got an email from the jeweler confirming again that the serial number on my paperwork matched their internal record, and they told me they could confirm the physical ring if law enforcement brought it in. I forwarded that to the officer, and he replied that it helped, and that they would keep pushing on the record's side. That same week, I got a call from someone at Nessa's company, not her boss, not human resources, a compliance person, a woman who sounded exhausted. She asked if I was the spouse of Nessa. She asked if I had filed a police report involving an employee, and when I said yes, she asked if I would be willing to come in to discuss it. I asked why, and she said there were internal concerns about unauthorized property and workplace conduct, and she said they were reviewing multiple complaints, and she said my report triggered attention because it involved an employee showing up at a private residence unannounced. Nessa begged me not to go. She told me it would make it worse. She told me I would destroy her career. She told me I was vindictive, and I told her if her career depends on me pretending nothing happened, then her career is already on fire. It just has not reached the outside yet. So I went, not alone, because I did not trust the situation and I did not bring a friend. I brought my building's on-site security manager, a retired guy named Hal who has seen every kind of neighbor problem and does not get flustered. I told him I needed someone calm and adult to sit in a room and witness. He agreed without asking too many questions, which I appreciated. We went to the company office, we sat in a small conference room, and the compliance woman came in with another person from internal investigations. They asked me to explain everything from the ring loss to seeing it on Cardin's hand, to his comment about talking to my wife. And I kept my voice steady and factual because I could feel how easily this could turn into a messy he said, she said situation. They asked how sure I was it was my ring. I gave them the serial number. I gave them the jeweler paperwork. I described the dent. I told them Cardin said my name at my door, and they exchanged a look that made my stomach drop because it was the look of people who are not surprised, people who have heard adjacent stories before. They asked me if I believed my wife was involved romantically with him, and I told them I did not know, but I told them she admitted she found the ring and kept it, and that it disappeared after Cardin saw it in her desk, and I could feel Hal beside me shifting slightly like he was holding himself back from reacting. They thanked me, then they told me something that made my skin go cold. They told me Cardin was already under review for improper access to employee belongings. They told me there were reports of items going missing from desks, from lockers, from personal bags, and that complaints kept getting withdrawn, and they said withdrawn like it was a pattern. Like people got pressured until they backed down. I asked why he still worked there if they had all that, and the compliance woman said he was a contractor in a gray area. He floated between departments. He was useful, and she said useful like it was an admission of failure, like she hated the word. Then they asked me for one thing I did not expect. They asked if I had any photos of him wearing the ring, and my stomach dropped because I did not take one in the lobby. I did not think to. I was too busy trying to be a rational adult and not get myself arrested for lunging at someone's hand. I told them no, but I told them I could identify it again if I saw it, and they nodded and they said okay, and then they asked if I would be willing to come back if they set up a meeting where he was present, and they said it in that careful corporate way where they never say confrontation, but that is what it is. I said yes. When Nessa found out I met with compliance, she cried in the bathroom with the door shut, not loud sobbing, just that quiet broken sound people make when they are trying to stay controlled. And I stood outside the door feeling numb because part of me wanted to comfort her, and part of me wanted to ask why she never felt that urgency when I asked about my ring. That night she finally admitted what she had been hiding, not an affair confession, something worse in a different way. She admitted Cardin had been pressuring her at work for months. He had been using small favors, little threats, and leverage. He had helped her when she made a mistake on a shipment record, not because he was nice, but because he wanted her to owe him, and once she owed him, he started making requests that were not normal. He started asking her to sign things she did not fully understand. He started asking her to give him access to areas she did not have a reason to access. He started showing up too close to her desk too often, and she kept telling herself it was easier to keep him calm than to fight him. I asked why she did not tell me, and she said she was ashamed. She said she thought she could handle it. She said she did not want me to see her as weak. She said she did not want trouble, and then she admitted the part that made me feel like I might throw up. She admitted that when she found my ring, she did not put it back where I would find it. She kept it in her desk at work, not because she planned some big betrayal, but because she liked having something that was ours in a place where she felt trapped. Like it anchored her. Then she said one day Cardin saw it, he asked about it, he laughed, he called it a nice piece, and she told him it was mine, and he said something that made her stomach drop. He told her that if she ever tried to make him look bad, he could make her life very difficult, and he tapped the ring when he said it like the ring was not jewelry, it was a symbol that he could take from her, from us, if he wanted. She said the next day it was gone. She said she told herself it would turn up. She said she was too scared to admit it to me, because admitting it meant admitting she brought my ring to work and created the opportunity for him to take it. I stared at her while she said all that, and I wanted to feel compassion, but all I felt was this deep exhaustion, because even if she was telling the truth, she still chose silence over honesty for 2 years, and she let me believe I lost something that she was hiding in a desk drawer. The next morning, the compliance woman called me and told me they scheduled a meeting with Cardin, and they asked if I would come in, and I said yes, and Hal came again because I did not trust myself to stay calm without someone steady beside me. In that meeting, Cardin walked in like he owned the place. He smiled. He greeted the compliance team like they were his coworkers, not his investigators, and he looked at me and smiled like we had a private joke. He wore the ring again. This time I did not hesitate. I told the compliance woman to look at his hand, and I watched her eyes lock on the ring, and I watched her face change, and she asked him where he got it. Carden tried to joke, he tried to say it was his, he tried to shrug, then the internal investigator asked him to remove it and hand it over for inspection. Carden's smile finally broke. He refused. He said they cannot demand his personal property. He said this is harassment. He said I am targeting him. He said my wife is manipulating me, and he said my wife like she was a pawn he still thought he controlled. The compliance woman told him if he refused, they would end the meeting and escalate to law enforcement cooperation, and Carden stood up so fast his chair scraped, and he said fine, then he walked out. I sat there shaking because he just walked out with my ring again, like even in a conference room with 2 investigators, he still thought he could leave without consequences. The compliance woman told me to stay seated. She told me they were calling security. She told me they were documenting everything. And she told me they would provide the police with their internal findings. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone else besides me was treating this as real. Update 2 months later. 2 months later, my life felt split into 2 tracks. The normal track where I still pack lunches and answer school emails and pretend my kids are not picking up on the tension. And the other track where I am watching my marriage fracture in slow motion while an investigation crawls forward like it is walking through mud. Carden did not show up at my house again, but his presence stayed because once you know someone can step into your space, you start seeing the world differently. Every knock feels heavier. Every unexpected car slows your heart down for a second. The police case moved, but not fast. The officer told me they requested pawn transaction records from several places, and that some shops cooperate quickly while others are slower, and that if the ring was sold privately it would not show in pawn logs, and I could hear in his voice he was trying to keep me grounded, because he has seen people build their whole sanity on the idea that one item being recovered will fix everything. Meanwhile, Nessa's workplace blew up, not in a public scandal way, but in that internal corporate panic way. Carden's contract was terminated, security access was changed, and several employees were interviewed, and Nessa came home looking like she had been squeezed dry. She started talking in fragments, not dramatic monologues, little pieces. She would mention that someone asked her about a shipment discrepancy from months ago. She would mention that people were suddenly comparing signatures. She would mention that her supervisor was acting nervous. And every time she said something like that, I got this cold feeling that Carden was not just stealing rings from desks. He was tangled in bigger theft. And Nessa had been pulled into his orbit without realizing how deep it went. She finally told me the truth about why he showed up at our door, and this is the part that made my stomach twist because it was so calculated. She said he had been pressuring her to sign off on a corrected inventory report that would hide missing equipment. She refused. He got angry, then he told her he could come to her house and make her explain herself to her husband. He told her he could make it look like she was having an affair. He told her he could make her home feel unsafe. And he said it casually to her at work like it was just a tactic. She said she thought he was bluffing. She said she did not think he would actually show up. Then he did, and when he did, he wore my ring, and she said she understood instantly that he was not bluffing about anything. I asked her why she still tried to deny it, why she still tried to make me feel crazy, and she said because she panicked, because she could see the trap, because if she admitted he stole it from her desk, then she would have to admit she brought it there, and she would have to admit she had been signing things under pressure, and she would have to admit she did not tell me about any of it, and she said she did not want to lose her job and her marriage at the same time. She said she thought she could keep it contained. Contained like this was a spill you can wipe up, not a person actively stepping into our life. I told her that her denial did not contain anything, it just made me feel alone, and she cried, and I did not feel satisfied because I do not want my wife crying. I want the truth. I want the truth to be the baseline in my house. The second twist came from the police officer. He called me and told me they had a lead not on a pawn shop sale but on an online secondhand listing that had been reported by a store clerk, and I asked what that meant. And he told me one of the second-hand jewelry buyers recognized the serial pattern and flagged it, and they provided the name and contact info tied to the attempted sale. The name was not Carden's, it was another person, someone connected to the same company, which made my stomach drop because it meant this was a web, not one guy doing weird power games. The officer asked me to come in and provide another statement, and I did, and he told me they were now looking at a small theft ring tied to workplace access, and he said it carefully, like he did not want to give me hope that would turn into disappointment, but the word ring in that context made me want to scream because my ring was literally the reason any of this surfaced. During all this, my kids started acting out in small ways, not because they knew details, but because they felt the shift. June started asking if mom was mad at dad. Asher started clinging at bedtime, and I had to keep my voice steady while my own head was spinning, because I refused to let my kids carry adult fear. Nessa and I started sleeping in separate rooms again, not with a big announcement, just drifting, because it was hard to share a bed when trust felt like a cracked plate, and every day the crack got a little longer. Then Carden tried one last move, not by showing up at our house, but by showing up where he could force contact without trespassing. He waited near the entrance of my building during the middle of the day, not hiding, just standing there like he had every right, and when I walked out to take a call, he stepped forward and smiled. He told me I was making trouble. He told me my wife was going to blame me when she lost her job. He told me I should drop the police thing. He told me that ring is not worth all this, and he said it like he was doing me a favor, like he was the adult giving advice. I did not argue with him, I did not threaten, I just asked him one question. I asked him why he was wearing my ring. He smiled wider, then he did something small and disgusting. He rotated the ring slightly on his finger like he was making sure I saw it. And he told me possession is 9/10 of life. Then he walked away before I could respond, like he knew that if he stayed longer it would become a scene, and he wanted me to be the person who created a scene. I reported that contact to the officer and to the building security manager, and Hal added it to his incident log. And I hated that my marriage had now involved building security logs, police case numbers, workplace investigations, and my kids picking up on tension they cannot name. The day that changed everything was when the officer called and told me they had executed a search related to Cardin's associates, and they recovered multiple stolen items, and among those items was a men's wedding band with a dent and an engraving consistent with the serial record I provided. I drove to the station with my heart pounding, and they placed the ring in an evidence bag on the table. And even through plastic I could see the dent, I could see my engraving if I tilted it right, and I felt this weird wave of emotion that was not relief, not triumph, just grief, because the ring came back, but the time did not, the trust did not, the quiet feeling of being safe in my own home did not. The officer told me it would remain evidence until the case progressed, but he said the documentation was strong, and he said there were multiple victims, and he said Cardin was being charged with theft and intimidation-related conduct, and he said it in that flat professional tone, but I could hear in it that Cardin's charm was not working on everyone anymore. Nessa cried when I told her the ring was recovered, and she asked if I could bring it home, and I told her not yet, and she looked crushed, but I could not pretend a ring returning erases 2 years of silence and weeks of denial. Final update 6 months later. 6 months after Cardin knocked on my door wearing my ring, the case ended the way these things often end, not with one big satisfying moment, but with a series of official steps that still left emotional rubble behind. Cardin took a plea deal. I found that out through the officer, and through a letter from the prosecutor's office that gave me victim notification information. The charges reflected what they could prove cleanly: theft tied to multiple incidents, intimidation elements, and a broader scheme involving stolen property moving through coworkers who were either complicit or scared, and seeing it described in that sterile language was surreal. Because my reality had been shaking for months, and the system described it like a spreadsheet. Nessa's workplace fired more than one person, and Nessa kept her job, but not without consequences. She had to sit through interviews, she had to explain why she signed certain documents, she had to show messages where she told Cardin no, she had to admit she kept my ring at work, and she came home looking smaller every night, like the shame weighed more than her body. I wish I could say that went straight into a redemption arc where we hugged and made up and everything was fine, but that is not what happened, because even when I believed her that she was pressured and scared, I could not erase the fact she lied to my face. She watched me doubt myself, she watched me question my own eyes, and she let it go on because she was protecting her own image. We tried to function for the kids, we kept routines steady, we kept voices low, we avoided fighting in front of them, but the trust was not there, and without trust, every small thing becomes a question, every late return becomes a suspicion, every phone buzz becomes a story your brain invents to fill the gap. The turning point for us was not a counseling session, it was a practical moment. Nessa asked me if I wanted to put the ring back on when it was released from evidence, and I realized I did not because the ring was cursed, not because I wanted to punish her, but because wearing it again felt like pretending nothing changed, and something did change permanently. Nessa moved into a separate place nearby for a while, not as a dramatic escape, just as a boundary, because the house felt like a pressure cooker, and because I needed space to think without her face in the room making me second-guess whether I was being fair or being weak. We set a schedule for the kids that kept their school routine stable, we handled exchanges quietly, we kept communication focused on the kids and the bills, and we stopped trying to force normal when normal was not real anymore. When the prosecutor finally released the ring back to me, I held it in my hand for a long time. I turned it slowly, I traced the dent with my thumb, and I felt a weird sadness that surprised me because it was not just metal, it was proof that my life had been touched by someone who enjoyed making people feel small, and it was also proof that my wife made choices that put our home in his orbit. I did not throw the ring away, I did not make a speech about it. I put it in a locked box with the original paperwork and the case number because I needed it out of sight, not destroyed, just contained. The last time I saw Cardin was at a restitution hearing, not in a dramatic face-off, just a courtroom hallway where people avoid eye contact. He looked different without the confident posture. He looked like a man who expected the world to keep letting him slide, and he glanced at me once with a look that felt like irritation, like I was the reason consequences happened, and I realized he would never see himself as the problem. He would always see himself as someone who got unlucky. I walked out of that building and went straight to pick up my kids, and June asked if we could do a family movie night later, and I told her yes, and I meant it in the only way that mattered, not as a promise that everything is fixed, but as a promise that I am here and that my kids will not be the ones paying for the choices adults made.